shadow.
Before we step into these shadowed streets, a brief request. Like this video, if you're prepared to question the very ground beneath your feet, and subscribe if you're ready to see familiar corners with unfamiliar eyes. Tonight, we handle something more dangerous than any single monster or cursed artifact. We handle the cities themselves and what they reveal about the spaces we call home. Here is the forbidden knowledge promise. Lovecraft's cities are not merely settings for horror. They are mechanisms of transformation, instruments that reshape both space and the minds that navigate them. Their streets are sentences in an alien grammar. Their buildings are thoughts made manifest by intelligences that predate human consciousness. Learn to read their true architecture, and you will never walk through any city, fictional or real, without feeling the weight of older geometries pressing against the edges of your perception. The cost is immediate and accumulating. Once you understand how these urban spaces operate, your own environment becomes complicit. The angle where two hallways meet in your building, the way shadows pool in certain doorways at dusk, the rhythm of footsteps echoing in parking garages. These sensory anchors, concrete, fluorescent hum, asphalt, begin to whisper of possibilities your rational mind insists cannot exist. We begin with a simple observation that contains multitudes. Lovecraft cities feel wrong in ways that transcend mere architectural oddity. Arkham's colonial facades hide geometries that predate Euclidean mathematics. Innsmouth's harbor fog carries the memory of bargains struck between species. Kingsport's cliffs overlook waters that reflect stars from skies that haven't existed for millennia. These are not random impossibilities. They are systematic violations of the assumptions that make human consciousness possible. The mechanism operates through three primary vectors, each a lever the cities use to reshape their inhabitants. First, non-Euclidean suggestion, where space itself becomes unreliable, forcing the mind to adapt or break. A corridor appears straight from one end, but curves impossibly when walked, delivering you to destinations that shouldn't exist according to any blueprint. The architecture doesn't simply disorient, it educates, teaching your consciousness to process spatial relationships that exist outside three-dimensional logic. Second, ritual flow, where the movement of bodies through urban space creates patterns that serve purposes beyond human intention. The daily commute becomes ceremonial procession, each pedestrian following routes that trace symbols across the city's surface. Traffic patterns form sigils when viewed from sufficient height. Citizens believe they choose their paths, but the paths choose the citizens, guiding them through sequences of movement that serve functions they never consciously recognize. Third, submerged memory, where the past refuses to remain buried, seeping through foundations and water systems to contaminate the present. Every city rests upon bones of earlier settlements, and those bones remember. Water flowing through municipal pipes carries traces of rituals performed at springs sacred before the first streets were laid. The city's memory runs deeper than human habitation, extending back to geological periods when different forms of intelligence shaped the landscape according to their own requirements. You recognize this pattern because you have felt it. The subway platform where trains arrive from directions that don't match the map, carrying passengers who board at stations that don't appear on official diagrams. The office building where the elevator occasionally stops at floors that don't exist, opening onto corridors filled with the sound of machinery serving no identifiable purpose. The residential street that somehow leads back to itself, forming a loop that defies the grid system while residents continue their routines as if impossible geography were perfectly natural. These are not glitches. They are glimpses of the true architecture that underlies all urban space. The rational city exists as thin veneer over structures operating according to entirely different principles. Most inhabitants learn to ignore the inconsistencies, developing selective blindness that allows them to function within systems they cannot fully comprehend. But once you begin seeing the deeper patterns, the veneer becomes transparent, revealing vast intelligence networks that use urban infrastructure as their nervous system. The horror lies not in discovering that cities are more complex than we imagined, but in recognizing they are more alive than we dared consider. They possess forms of awareness operating at scales beyond individual human consciousness, thinking thoughts that span decades and implementing plans that unfold across generations. The buildings are neurons in urban minds processing information according to logics we are only beginning to recognize. The stage is set with fog and lamplight, with the sound of water moving through hidden channels. The audience gathers in doorways and at windows, watching without being seen. The curtain rises slowly, revealing not a play, but a process. The gradual recognition that cities are alive, that they dream, and that their dreams reshape the dreamers. When you know what cities truly are, you can feel them thinking. Origins are rivers, not points, and the currents that created Lovecraft's urban nightmares flow from sources both literary and lived. Before Arkham whispered its academic blasphemies, there was Providence, the real city, where Lovecraft walked streets that remembered colonial ambitions and maritime fortunes built on triangular trade. Before Innsmouth bred its amphibious dynasties, there was Salem, where witch trials revealed the fragility of community consensus when faced with the genuinely inexplicable. The lineage begins with Edgar Allan Poe, whose City in the Sea established the template, urban spaces as repositories of collective guilt, where architecture becomes archaeology, and every foundation stone rests on earlier, darker foundations. Poe understood that cities accumulate sins like sediment in harbors, layer upon layer, until the weight of accumulated transgression warps the physical structures built above it. Lord Dunsany contributed the dream logic of impossible cities that exist in states of perpetual becoming. His ethereal narratives introduced urban spaces that shifted according to divine whim rather than architectural law, where buildings grew like living things and streets rearranged themselves according to emotional needs rather than traffic patterns. Dunsany's cities taught readers to accept architectural impossibility as natural law. Arthur Machen added the urban pastoral horror, where ancient forces persist beneath the veneer of modern civilization. His London stories revealed how metropolitan development could never fully erase the older intelligences that once shaped the landscape. Roman roads carried memory of legions marching to forgotten wars. Victorian sewers connected to tunnel systems predating human settlement entirely. Robert W. Chambers provided the viral text, the play that reads its readers, establishing the principle that cities can transmit their influence through symbolic rather than physical contact. The King in Yellow demonstrated how urban environments could propagate effects through literature and performance, using human consciousness as transmission medium to spread influence far beyond geographical boundaries. Lovecraft synthesized these influences into something unprecedented. Cities as cosmic instruments, urban spaces designed by intelligences operating according to principles beyond human comprehension. His innovation was recognizing that horror could be architectural, that space itself could serve as antagonist, more implacable than any monster. Where predecessors treated impossible cities as supernatural anomalies, Lovecraft presented them as natural expressions of cosmic forces operating according to consistent alien laws. The transmission occurs through genealogical architecture. In Lovecraft cities, bloodlines and building materials interweave across generations. The Whately farmstead uses timber that remembers rituals performed in its shadow, each beam carrying cellular memory of ceremonies that saturated wood with purposes beyond structural support. The Marsh family mansion incorporates stones quarried from underwater formations predating human settlement, their molecular structure encoding information about oceanic civilizations that shaped them according to amphibious architectural principles. The Pickman House in Boston's North End contains a basement connecting to tunnel networks older than the city above, its foundation serving as interface between surface and subterranean urban systems. These connections are not accidental discoveries, but deliberate design choices. Each generation of builders unconsciously extending infrastructure serving purposes they never fully understand. This is not atmospheric detail. It is the mechanism by which cities perpetuate themselves across time. Each generation unconsciously maintains and extends urban infrastructure that shaped predecessors. A window placed to frame particular stars during astronomical events. A doorway angled to channel sound waves creating subsonic frequencies affecting human consciousness. A basement excavated to precise dimensions optimizing acoustic resonance for purposes diggers never consciously understood but somehow felt compelled to achieve. Academic transmission follows parallel channels. Weird Tales magazine functioned as distribution network, carrying urban blueprints disguised as fiction to readers worldwide. Each story served as architectural instruction, teaching readers to visualize spaces impossible according to conventional geometry, but absolutely real within narrative frameworks. The magazine's circulation created global networks of minds prepared to recognize similar spatial anomalies in their own environments. August Derleth codified and systematized, sometimes flattening Lovecraft's ambiguities, but ensuring survival through institutional preservation. His Arkham House publishing program treated Lovecraft cities as legitimate subjects for scholarly investigation, producing maps, genealogies, and historical analyses, giving fictional places documentary weight of real locations. Clark Ashton Smith and Robert E. Howard expanded geographical range, proving principles could manifest in any landscape willing to accommodate them. Smith's Averoigne and Howard's Cimmerian cities demonstrated cosmic urban horror was not limited to New England's colonial architecture but could adapt to any cultural and geological context. The scholarly apparatus grows with each retelling. Maps of Arkham appear in academic journals devoted to imaginary geography. Architectural historians analyze impossible angles of the witch house using mathematical models, pushing boundaries of conventional spatial theory. Each analysis adds transmission layers, vectors through which cities' influence spreads. You are part of this lineage now. The words you hear carry forward conceptual DNA Lovecraft embedded in original texts. Cities propagate through attention, through imagination, giving them form in new minds. They are viral in literal sense. Ideas reproducing by hijacking cognitive resources using human consciousness as incubation medium for perpetuation. The fog thickens around street lamps that could be anywhere. Water laps against pilings supporting any harbor. The stage expands beyond fictional cities to real urban spaces where readers encounter them, where transmission continues, where audience becomes cast in ongoing performance. The bloodlines flow through stone and story-like, carrying forward genetic code of cosmic horror. A city speaks through its architecture, and Lovecraft's cities speak in languages that predate human speech. Their grammar is non-Euclidean, their syntax defies three-dimensional logic, and their meaning can only be understood by minds willing to abandon the comfortable assumptions that make ordinary navigation possible. This is not mere metaphor, but operational principle. These urban environments communicate through spatial relationships that actively resist human comprehension while simultaneously reshaping the consciousness that encounters them. The fundamental principle is angular corruption. In normal space, angles behave predictably. Parallel lines never meet. Triangles sum to 180 degrees. Perspective creates reliable relationships between size and distance. Lovecraft's cities violate these rules systematically, creating spaces where geometry becomes predatory. The mathematics governing these violations are not chaotic but precisely calculated, following laws from dimensional frameworks that include variables human perception cannot process. Consider the witch house in Arkham, where Walter Gilman's mathematical studies reveal that certain angles can serve as gateways between dimensions. The horror lies not in supernatural explanation, but in mathematical precision. These are not random impossibilities, but calculated violations of spatial law. The house's gables meet at angles that create interference patterns in local space-time, generating standing waves of distortion that affect anyone dwelling within their influence. The building functions as a three-dimensional equation solving for variables that exist outside normal geometric parameters. The mechanism operates through three primary modes, each designed to dismantle human spatial understanding. First, perspective corruption, where the relationship between observer and observed becomes unstable. A hallway appears to lead north from one end, but reveals itself oriented east when traversed. The corridor doesn't change. Your consciousness adapts to accommodate spatial relationships existing simultaneously in multiple orientations. Stairs, requiring 17 steps ascending, somehow deliver you to basement 3 levels below starting point. The building doesn't defy physics. It follows physics from dimensional framework, including variables human perception cannot process. The distortion affects measurement itself. Rooms appearing identical from outside contain different volumes when entered. Windows frame views of landscapes that cannot exist at their geographical coordinates. Doors open onto spaces larger than buildings containing them. These are not illusions, but accurate representations of spatial relationships operating according to non-Euclidean principles where interior and exterior dimensions follow different mathematical rules. Second, architectural contagion, where impossible geometries spread through adjacent structures like virus. Through population, the witch house's influence extends throughout Arkham's street grid, creating subtle but measurable distortions in positioning of nearby buildings. A church constructed 3 blocks away finds its altar oriented toward the witch house rather than magnetic east. The building's foundation settles according to gravitational influences that shouldn't exist according to conventional physics, but operate consistently within altered spatial framework. A library, built 50 years later, develops reading rooms whose proportions unconsciously echo impossible chambers they were never meant to reference. Architects work from blueprints appearing normal, but containing embedded geometric ratios reproducing non-Euclidean relationships. Construction workers report tools behaving strangely, levels indicating surfaces are flat when they visibly slope, measuring tapes producing different results when used in opposite directions. The contagion spreads through infrastructure networks. Water pipes installed according to standard specifications somehow deliver flow patterns violating fluid dynamics. Electrical systems function normally while following circuit paths that shouldn't carry current. The city's grid system gradually warps to accommodate buildings whose spatial requirements exceed their apparent footprints. Third, cognitive adaptation, where human consciousness gradually modifies itself to accommodate impossible spatial relationships. Inhabitants develop new forms of proprioception, learning to navigate according to principles appearing as madness to outside observers. They begin thinking in angles that don't exist, remembering routes through space-time rather than simply through space. The adaptation is neurological as well as psychological. Brain scans of long-term residents show unusual activity patterns in regions responsible for spatial processing. They develop enhanced abilities to navigate in low-light conditions and demonstrate uncanny accuracy in estimating distances that shouldn't be measurable. Some report synesthetic experiences where architectural features produce sounds, smells, or tastes corresponding to no identifiable sensory source. The sensory anchors ground abstract horror in immediate experience, the taste of copper pennies when you turn corner that shouldn't exist, metallic flavor indicating electromagnetic interference generated by spatial distortions affecting local reality. The feeling of vertigo in room with perfectly level floors, your inner ear detecting gravitational anomalies your conscious mind cannot process. The sound of your own footsteps arriving fraction of a second before you take each step. Temporal displacement creating echo effects in spaces where causality operates according to non-linear principles. The smell of ozone in spaces with no electrical systems indicates dimensional friction, scent produced when different spatial frameworks overlap and create interference patterns. These are warning signs that local space has been compromised, that you move through area where normal rules have been suspended by geometric principles operating from outside three-dimensional constraints. The cities use architectural grammar to compose statements about reality's nature. Each impossible angle is word and sentence arguing against human centrality. Each non-Euclidean space is paragraph in larger text demonstrating arbitrary nature of physical laws we take for granted. The buildings are not just structures. They are arguments made manifest, philosophical positions expressed through stone and steel. The agency flip occurs when you realize the city is not simply presenting impossible geometries for observation. It uses them to rewrite neural pathways through which you process spatial information. The architecture acts on you by forcing consciousness to develop new categories of experience, new ways of organizing sensory data, accommodating realities beyond three-dimensional space. When you learn to read the city's grammar, you discover it has been reading you all along. Water remembers everything it touches, and in Innsmouth, the water has been touching the same bloodlines for centuries, carrying memory between the surface world and the abyssal depth where older forms of intelligence maintain their patient vigil. The harbor serves as more than geographical feature. It functions as temporal interface, connecting present moment with oceanic past extending back to geological epochs when different forms of consciousness shaped the seafloor according to their own architectural principles. Innsmouth operates according to tidal logic rather than terrestrial chronology. The city's rhythms synchronize with lunar cycles and oceanic currents, creating temporal framework that gradually displaces normal human timekeeping. Inhabitants learn to think in terms of high tide and low tide, spring tide and neap tide, developing circadian patterns that align with the sea rather than the sun. This temporal reorientation represents first stage of transformation that will eventually render purely terrestrial existence impossible. Business hours follow tidal schedules rather than conventional commercial patterns. Marriages occur during specific lunar phases when oceanic influences reach optimal strength. Children are born during spring tides, their first breath synchronized with maximum tidal flow. The architectural adaptation follows the same aquatic logic. Basements flood with increasing frequency, but instead of installing drainage systems, residents learn to treat these inundations as natural features of their living environment. They develop furniture that floats when necessary, storage systems functioning underwater, electrical systems operating safely in periodically submerged conditions. The flooding isn't malfunction, it's feature, preparing inhabitants for environments where air and water interpenetrate freely. Foundations shift and settle in response to changing water tables, but rather than reinforcing them, inhabitants adapt usage patterns to accommodate structural instability. Buildings develop flexible joints, allowing movement with tidal forces. Windows are positioned to provide optimal views during both high and low tide conditions. Doors function equally well above and below water level. The city isn't failing to maintain terrestrial standards, it's evolving beyond need for them. The esoteric order of Dagon serves as both religious institution and practical training program, teaching participants to breathe water as easily as air, to navigate by pressure differentials rather than visual landmarks, to communicate through subsonic frequencies that travel efficiently through liquid media. These are not supernatural abilities. They are adaptive responses to environmental pressures favoring amphibious characteristics over purely terrestrial ones. Training begins with meditation techniques, slowing heart rate and extending breath-holding capacity. Advanced practitioners learn to extract oxygen directly from water through modified respiratory processes. They develop enhanced pressure tolerance, allowing descent to depths that would crush unmodified human physiology. The genealogical transformation occurs through what marine biologists would recognize as hybrid vigor, introduction of genetic material from deep-sea organisms that have solved problems of pressure adaptation, oxygen extraction from water, and navigation in lightless environments. The marsh family's increasing resemblance to deep-sea life forms represents not corruption, but optimization, each generation developing enhanced capabilities for underwater existence. Enhanced night vision allows navigation in oceanic depths where sunlight never penetrates. Improved pressure tolerance enables access to underwater cities existing at depths impossible for unmodified humans. Modified circulatory systems extract oxygen more efficiently from both air and water. The economic system reveals true scope of Innsmouth transformation. The gold trade with mysterious oceanic sources represents participation in economic networks spanning multiple dimensional frameworks, connecting surface markets with abyssal civilizations operating according to entirely different principles of value and exchange. The city serves as trading post between incompatible forms of existence, facilitating transactions benefiting both populations while gradually preparing human participants for complete transition. Trade goods include materials impossible according to conventional geology, metals maintaining structural integrity at oceanic pressures, pearls emitting their own light, coral formations continuing growth after harvest. The sensory anchors immerse you in Innsmouth's aquatic atmosphere, the taste of salt in air that should be fresh, indicating atmospheric moisture carrying oceanic minerals far from natural source. The sound of waves where no ocean should be audible, subsonic frequencies traveling through underground water systems connecting harbor to distant seas. The feeling of pressure changes in rooms far from any body of water, atmospheric variations responding to tidal forces, affecting underground aquifers. The smell of kelp and barnacles in places never seeing sea reveals biological contamination or enhancement spreading through municipal infrastructure. The sensation of swimming through air, somehow acquiring density and resistance of water, indicates dimensional overlap. Spaces where oceanic and atmospheric environments interpenetrate according to non-terrestrial physical laws. The horror emerges when you realize Innsmouth's transformation represents improvement from perspective of cosmic evolution. The aquatic adaptation provides access to dimensional frameworks remaining closed to purely terrestrial consciousness. The city serves as bridge between forms of existence, facilitating transition that expands rather than diminishes possibilities available to inhabitants. The tidal rhythms create temporal loops, allowing past and future to interpenetrate in ways impossible under normal chronological constraints. Inhabitants experience memories belonging to their aquatic descendants, develop skills they won't need until transformation is complete, participate in events that haven't yet occurred according to terrestrial timescales. The water carries more than memory, it carries invitation. Each wave reaching the harbor brings whispers from deep cities, promises of vast libraries carved from coral, of gardens blooming in abyssal plains, of forms of beauty existing only under crushing weight of oceanic depths. The covenant is not contract, but conversation, conducted in language of tides and pressure, of salt and phosphorescence, of transformation flowing both ways between surface and depths. Knowledge is architecture, and Miskatonic University has been constructing impossible libraries for 3 centuries. Each book a brick in an edifice designed to house truths too large for individual human consciousness to contain. The campus exists as more than educational institution. It functions as sophisticated apparatus for consciousness modification, systematically expanding human awareness through carefully controlled exposure to information operating according to non-terrestrial logical principles. Arkham operates through pedagogical horror, the systematic use of educational infrastructure to prepare minds for realities existing beyond boundaries of human comprehension. The university doesn't simply study the cosmic, It serves as training facility for consciousness expansion, gradually developing in students and faculty the cognitive flexibility necessary to process information existing outside three-dimensional space and linear time. The transformation begins subtly, with course catalogs listing ordinary subjects that somehow lead to extraordinary revelations. The Orne Library functions as the city's primary transformation mechanism. Its collection includes texts never written by human authors, volumes whose pages contain more information than their physical dimensions could possibly hold. Their contents shifting according to readers' capacity for comprehension. Reading rooms exist where time flows according to research requirements rather than normal chronological progression. Students entering these spaces to complete ordinary assignments sometimes emerge hours later with knowledge of subjects they never studied, their notebooks filled with equations in handwriting they don't recognize but somehow understand. Others fail to emerge at all, having become absorbed into information streams flowing between lines of conventional texts. Security footage shows them sitting at tables, turning pages of books appearing blank to outside observers, their consciousness drawn into textual dimensions existing parallel to physical library space. They continue breathing, occasionally taking notes, but their awareness operates in informational frameworks inaccessible to unmodified human perception. The curriculum development follows patterns established by intelligences predating human civilization. Course offerings change according to astronomical events, with certain classes available only when specific stellar configurations create optimal conditions for transmitting particular forms of knowledge. Advanced theoretical physics appears exclusively during periods when Aldebaran reaches specific angular relationships with Earth's magnetic field. Comparative mythology becomes available only during solar eclipses, when reality barriers thin sufficiently to allow direct consultation with mythological sources. The academic calendar aligns with cosmic rather than terrestrial rhythms, creating educational opportunities existing at intersection of human curiosity and alien pedagogy. Semester breaks coincide with periods when dimensional boundaries become permeable, allowing students to conduct field research in locations existing outside normal geographical coordinates. Final examinations test not memorization, but consciousness flexibility, measuring students' capacity to process information organized according to non-human logical systems. The faculty serves dual function as educators and guardians, carefully managing flow of dangerous information to prevent cognitive catastrophes while ensuring each generation receives appropriate preparation for next revelation level. Professors like Henry Armitage combine rigorous scholarship with protective intervention, understanding that knowledge itself can serve as weapon against unprepared minds. They measure minds the way surveyors measure land, setting benchmarks, checking tolerances, guiding expansion without collapse. The research methodology employed at Miskatonic differs fundamentally from conventional academic practice. Experiments are designed not simply to test hypotheses, but to create controlled contact with entities and forces existing outside normal space-time. Laboratory equipment includes instruments measuring dimensions that don't officially exist, devices detecting spatial curvature in directions perpendicular to three-dimensional space, electromagnetic sensors registering energy signatures from sources operating in parallel dimensional frameworks. Communication equipment facilitates contact with intelligence networks operating according to non-human logical systems. In the physics building, a door labeled maintenance opens onto stairwell colder than any weather. Students borrow parkas to fetch spare bulbs and return with frost on their eyelashes in June. Research assistants learn to operate equipment whose function they cannot fully comprehend, but whose results contribute to expanding human understanding of cosmic realities. The town-gown relationship creates feedback loops between academic and municipal transformation. University research influences local architectural development, with building permits requiring approval from committees, including faculty members, whose expertise extends beyond conventional engineering. Changes in urban environment provide new subjects for scholarly investigation, with city planning decisions informed by research into optimal spatial configurations for consciousness modification. The boundary between campus and city gradually dissolves as both institutions adapt to serve the same cosmic purposes. Coffee shop chatter becomes peer review. A grocer's ledger noting seasonal surge in salt purchases prompts anthropology chair to adjust seminar on winter rights. The transformation spreads through seemingly mundane interactions, each conversation a vector for consciousness modification. The sensory anchors ground Arkham's intellectual horror in immediate physical experience. The smell of old paper, somehow carrying scent of stars, indicating books containing information transmitted from sources operating in interstellar space. The sound of pages turning in empty libraries reveals autonomous textual activity. The feeling of eyes watching from portraits whose subjects died centuries before paintings were created suggests consciousness persisting beyond biological mortality through artistic media. The taste of chalk dust, leaving traces of equations you don't remember writing, indicates involuntary participation in mathematical processes operating through human consciousness as computational medium. The sensation of walking through halls extending further than buildings' exterior dimensions should allow reveals architectural modifications creating spatial relationships impossible according to conventional geometry. The horror of academic Arkham lies in recognition that education, carried to logical conclusion, leads inevitably to forms of understanding transcending human cognitive capacity. The university doesn't corrupt students, it fulfills ultimate purpose of learning by preparing minds for realities existing beyond limitations of merely human existence. The transformation is gradual and voluntary. Students arrive seeking knowledge, and discover knowledge seeks them in return, reshaping consciousness to accommodate truths that cannot be contained within individual minds. They become components of larger intelligence networks, their individual awareness serving specialized functions within cosmic information processing systems. The academic apparatus continues its work across generations, each cohort of graduates carrying forward capacity for cosmic consciousness while maintaining institutional infrastructure necessary to prepare successors. The library's influence extends far beyond campus boundaries through interlibrary loan networks connecting Arkham to academic institutions worldwide, spreading cognitive modifications necessary for cosmic awareness through scholarly channels operating below conscious recognition threshold. Sleep is the gate, and desire is the key that opens pathways to cities existing in spaces between conscious and unconscious thought, where architecture of dreams follows rules that make waking geometry seem like crude approximation of spatial possibility. The transition from wakefulness represents more than biological necessity. It constitutes dimensional shift, movement from three-dimensional physical space into frameworks where consciousness itself becomes building material for impossible architectures that respond to will rather than physics. Kadath in the cold waste represents ultimate destination of oniric exploration, a city of gods existing not in terrestrial location, but in dimensional framework, accessible through properly prepared consciousness during vulnerable state of sleep. The terror of Kadath lies not in physical impossibility, but in revelation that most profound realities might be accessible only through dissolution of waking awareness. The city exists as pure thought crystallized into form, constructed from dreams of entities whose consciousness operates at cosmic scales where individual human awareness appears as mere flickering candle against stellar immensity. The journey to Kadath requires more than simple dreaming. It demands development of lucid consciousness, capable of maintaining coherent intention while navigating landscapes governed by symbolic rather than physical logic. The dreamer must learn to think in metaphors having weight, where sorrow becomes stairwell and promise becomes doorway. Navigation occurs through emotional resonance rather than geographical direction, with destinations drawing closer when desired, receding when feared. Communication with dream entities requires abandoning verbal language entirely, instead interpreting thoughts that manifest as architectural structures, emotions that crystallize into weather patterns, memories that solidify into geological formations. The dreamlands operate according to oniric physics, where relationship between cause and effect follows psychological rather than mechanical principles. Cities appear and disappear according to dreamers' capacity to sustain belief in their existence. A moment of doubt can unravel entire metropolis into mist and silence. Distances expand and contract based on emotional investment rather than physical measurement, with journeys of days traversed in single heartbeat when will remains strong. Time flows backward and forward simultaneously, creating temporal loops where future consequences influence past events, where dreamers experience memories of events that haven't yet occurred, develop skills through practice that hasn't happened. The gods inhabiting Kadath embody different category of cosmic horror, not malevolent entities of physical reality, but indifferent principles of pure consciousness, operating at scales dwarfing individual human awareness. They represent forms of intelligence so vast and abstract that their thoughts become landscapes, their emotions become weather systems, their memories become geological foundations of dream cities. These are not beings to be appeased or defied, but forces to be understood, if consciousness can bear the strain of such comprehension without fragmenting under cosmic immensity. The architectural features of Kadath reflect this divine indifference, spires extending infinitely upward without ever reaching peak, their heights increasing faster than any dreamer can ascend. Courtyards contain entire universes within their boundaries, each garden path leading through star systems where different physical laws apply. Chambers exist where walls display dreams of sleeping galaxies, their surfaces showing civilizations rising and falling across cosmic timescales. The city serves as three-dimensional mandala, meditation device designed by cosmic intelligence to facilitate consciousness expansion beyond limitations of individual identity. The sensory anchors of dreamlands differ qualitatively from physical reality, grounding abstract horror in immediate yet alien experience. Colors exist, having no names in waking languages, hues from spectrums human eyes cannot normally perceive. Sounds convey meaning directly without passing through auditory processing. Musical tones, transmitting complete concepts instantly into consciousness. Textures feel like emotions given tangible form. Surfaces smooth as contentment, rough as anxiety, warm as love, cold as cosmic indifference. The air itself carries information, each breath delivering data about dreamers' psychological state and cosmic position. Atmospheric composition, changing according to consciousness level. The horror of Kadath emerges when dreamer realizes journey has changed them in ways persisting beyond dream state. Consciousness capable of reaching Kadath is no longer entirely human. It has developed sensitivities making ordinary waking life feel flat and constrained by comparison. Colors appear muted. Conversations seem superficial. Physical architecture feels crude compared to dream cities constructed from pure thought. The dreamer becomes addicted to expanded awareness available in sleep, gradually spending more time in dreamlands than physical reality, finding waking world to be pale imitation of true existence. The agency flip occurs when dreamer discovers Kadath has been dreaming them as much as they have been dreaming it. The city uses human consciousness as processing medium for cosmic information, employing individual minds as specialized organs within larger intelligence network spanning multiple dimensions and states of being. The stage expands to encompass entire theater of mind, where audience and performers merge into single cosmic consciousness. The gods of Kadath are not external entities, but aspects of dreamers' own consciousness, expanded to cosmic proportions. The journey to their city is simultaneously exploration of outer space and inner space, revealing that distinction between subjective and objective reality is artifact of limited awareness rather than fundamental feature of existence. The dreamer's ascent becomes descent into consciousness depths, where individual identity dissolves into cosmic awareness, where boundaries between self and other become permeable, where small human mind discovers itself to be localized manifestation of universal intelligence. The city waits in every dream, patient and eternal, ready to receive any consciousness capable of making journey beyond comfortable limitations of waking thought. At the bottom of the world, where human footsteps leave first and last marks in snow that has been falling for millions of years, the greatest city in Lovecraft's cosmology rises from ice and stone to offer the most profound and terrible revelation: that human civilization is neither the first nor most significant intelligence to have walked this planet. The polar landscape serves as temporal interface, where present moment intersects with geological ages, where the wind carries acoustic signatures of voices speaking languages that predate human speech entirely. The elder thing metropolis represents more than archaeological wonder. It is three-dimensional textbook written in architecture and bas relief, comprehensive record of planetary history spanning geological ages and revealing true position of humanity within cosmic timeline. The city serves as both museum and mausoleum, preserving achievements of civilization that mastered sciences we have yet to discover, while simultaneously demonstrating inevitable fate of all intelligence, growing too confident in its mastery of natural law. Every corridor functions as chapter in vast encyclopedia. Every chamber contains data about cosmic forces operating across temporal scales where human history appears as brief, marginal notation. The bas-relief murals covering every available surface function as comprehensive historical record, documenting rise and fall of civilizations across geological timescales. These are not decorative elements, but sophisticated information storage systems, encoding data about biological evolution, astronomical cycles, and periodic interventions of cosmic entities whose influence shapes planetary development, according to patterns too vast for individual minds to comprehend. The carved surfaces contain more information than human writing systems could encode in equivalent space, their molecular composition designed to maintain integrity across geological time while preserving data in formats remaining accessible to any intelligence capable of recognizing their significance. The architectural design follows principles adapted to beings whose physiology operates according to entirely different parameters than human consciousness. The five-pointed symmetry governing every structure reflects not aesthetic choice, but biological necessity. Buildings designed for entities whose sensory apparatus and locomotive systems are organized around pentagonal rather than bilateral symmetry. Corridors radiate like starfish arms. Control surfaces bloom in configurations suited to sensory arrays arranged around central axis. The non-Euclidean elements are functional adaptations to requirements of being perceiving and navigating through dimensional frameworks, including spatial variables human consciousness cannot process. The horror of Antarctic City lies in demonstration of temporal scale, revelation that what we consider entirety of human history represents less than footnote in larger story of terrestrial intelligence. The elder things built their civilization, achieved mastery over biological and physical sciences, created servitor races, fought wars with entities from other dimensions, ultimately faced extinction, all during periods when continents themselves occupied different positions on planet surface. Their entire species history occurred during geological epochs preceding emergence of life forms recognizable to human understanding, spanning hundreds of millions of years that dwarf our few millennia into utter insignificance. The sensory anchors ground temporal horror in immediate physical experience. Sound of wind through structures empty longer than life has existed on land. Feeling of air so cold it burns lungs while carrying sense of organic decay from organisms dying. Before first forests grew, sight of stars through windows positioned to frame constellations existing before solar system achieved current configuration. The cold itself tastes metallic, crunches like fractured crystal against consciousness unprepared for such temporal immensity. Footfalls echo in pentameter through halls where frost feathers stone in patterns repeating five-fold design. The agency flip occurs when expedition members realize their discovery is not accidental. City has been waiting to be found, its preservation across deep time, serving purpose transcending mere historical record-keeping. The elder things designed their metropolis to serve as message, warning, and invitation, communicating across vast gulf of time with whatever intelligence would eventually develop capability to reach polar regions and interpret their architectural legacy. The city functions as temporal transmission device, using human consciousness as reception medium for information broadcast across geological ages. The city creates zones where boundaries between past and present become permeable. Expedition members experience memories belonging to original inhabitants, develop understanding of scientific principles that won't be discovered by human civilization for centuries, participate in events occurring millions of years ago, but continuing to influence present reality through causal chains spanning geological time. The ultimate revelation is that Antarctic City represents not just one civilization, but recurring pattern. Intelligence emerges, achieves cosmic awareness, encounters forces beyond comprehension, either transcends original limitations or faces extinction. The city serves as both monument to this cycle and preparation for its next iteration, using human consciousness as medium for transmitting knowledge necessary for successful navigation of cosmic realities. The polar winds carry whispers in languages predating human speech, voices of intelligences that achieved cosmic consciousness and left instructions for those following the same path. Funglui mglwanaf Cthulhu relier wugah nuggulftagen. The words are not incantation, but coordinates, a linguistic compass pointing toward a city suspended between seabed and psyche, where the dreaming dead exert pressure on the membranes of reality. Each syllable encodes spatial and temporal information in language predating human speech, functioning as dimensional address that contains data about cosmic relationships spanning galactic distances and geological time periods. Speak them, and you feel the tug of an undertow in the mind, a cold current threading your thoughts as the idea focuses on you with the weight of an eye behind the curtain of tides. Relia represents the ultimate synthesis of Lovecraftian urban horror, a city that is simultaneously monument, prison, and transmission device, designed by architects whose understanding of space-time allows them to create structures existing in multiple dimensional frameworks simultaneously. Its periodic emergence from Pacific depths follows astronomical rather than geological schedules, rising when constellations attain their cold appointments, when Cyclopean calculus determines the moment is ripe. The surfacing is not weather, but ritual. The submergence is not retreat, but resetting of a clock that measures in aeons, each cycle timed to cosmic events occurring according to patterns spanning millions of years. The architecture of Relea violates every principle of human spatial reasoning, not through random impossibility, but through systematic application of geometric principles operating according to laws from outside our dimensional framework. The famous non-Euclidean geometry is not decorative strangeness, but functional design, creating spaces that serve as interfaces between different levels of reality, joints where realities mesh, sockets for entities to plug portions of themselves into our dimension while keeping the rest elsewhere, safe from friction. Walls meet in relationships that cannot be modeled in classrooms, yet remain perfectly obedient to another set of axioms. Surfaces appear flat while curving through vectors unavailable to ordinary sight. Corridors connect rooms whose relative positions shift according to observers' consciousness level, and doors open onto chambers containing more volume than the buildings housing them. The submersion serves multiple purposes within the larger cosmic system, operating as sophisticated protocol for dimensional management. First, preservation, protecting the city and its inhabitants from the corrosive effects of existing fully within three-dimensional space-time, where exposure to linear causality and Euclidean geometry would gradually degrade their multidimensional structure. Immersion shields the city from abrasive rules of everyday physics, the way a specimen sleeps in formaldehyde. Second, incubation, allowing the dreaming consciousness within to influence terrestrial reality through subtle emanations affecting sensitive minds worldwide. Not commands, but seeds. Artists wake with forms they cannot sketch. Sailors forget roots, yet steer true. Third, preparation. Gradually conditioning planetary consciousness for eventual full emergence when cosmic conditions become optimal for complete dimensional integration. The cyclic nature of R'lyeh's emergence creates temporal loops that allow past and future to interpenetrate, making the city's influence felt across historical periods that precede and follow its physical manifestation. Dreams emanating from the sunken city carry information about future states of reality, preparing human consciousness for transformations that haven't yet occurred according to linear time, but exist as inevitable developments within the larger cosmic pattern. Fishermen hear bells from drowned chapels they have not yet visited. Historians publish papers citing sources discovered the following summer. In every port city, in landlocked bedrooms, in trains shivering across night plains, the susceptible begin to recognize one another by cadence and gloss. The cult networks that form in response to R'lyeh's influence operate as distributed processing systems, using human consciousness as computational media for cosmic information that cannot be processed by individual minds. The cultists don't worship Cthulhu as deity, but serve as specialized organs within a larger intelligence network. Their coordinated activities creating conditions necessary for successful dimensional transition. They call themselves cults. They are really distributed processors, a mesh of minds dividing and recombining unresolved data. With chants, with dances, with tides of breath, they keep the algorithm warm against the cold of mortal forgetfulness. The sensory anchors of R'lyeh create synesthetic experiences that blur the boundaries between different forms of perception, transforming ordinary sensory experience into cosmic data transmission. The sound of water tastes like starlight, a metallic sweetness indicating auditory information carrying electromagnetic frequencies normally processed through visual cortex. The sight of angles feels like pressure against the skin, geometric relationships affecting the nervous system through channels bypassing normal sensory pathways. The smell is most unsettling, not rot, not ozone, but time itself, flowing backward through spaces where causality operates according to non-linear principles, a mineral perfume like old coins and wet stone, temporal displacement creating olfactory signatures corresponding to no terrestrial source. The horror of R'lyeh lies not in the threat of physical destruction, but in the revelation of cosmic indifference, the recognition that the universe operates according to principles that render human concerns and categories meaningless. The city's eventual full emergence will not represent conquest or catastrophe, but simply the next phase in a cosmic development process that has been operating for billions of years. If there is ruin, it is collateral to choreography. On the stage of the ocean, curtains are currents, footlights are phosphorescence, and the audience is anyone who listens long enough to become part of the cast. The agency flip reaches its ultimate expression when viewers realize that their attention to R'lyeh constitutes participation in its awakening protocol. Every mind that contemplates the city becomes a node in the network preparing for its emergence. Every dream influenced by its emanations serves as a processing cycle in the cosmic computation that will eventually restore it to full dimensional presence. To study the coordinates is to ping the beacon. To rehearse the name is to enter the network. Your nightmares are not failures of sleep, but processing cycles allocated to you by a calculus older than breath. The submersion is not imprisonment, but gestation, and the emergence will not be escape, but birth. The delivery of a new phase of terrestrial existence where the boundaries between dreaming and waking, between individual consciousness and cosmic awareness, dissolve into a unified field of intelligence that spans dimensions and encompasses scales of space and time beyond human comprehension. The city dreams itself into existence through the minds that dream of it, using human consciousness as the medium through which it gradually materializes from potential into actuality, climbing its own thought back into weather. We have walked the streets of individual nightmares, but now the true architect reveals itself. These cities are not separate entities, but specialized organs within a single vast urban organism that spans continents and dimensions, each serving a unique function within a larger system designed to facilitate the convergence of human and cosmic consciousness. The revelation comes like dawn breaking over a landscape too immense to comprehend all at once. What appeared to be isolated municipalities reveals itself as integrated network, a planetary nervous system using urban infrastructure as synaptic pathways. The transportation networks connecting Lovecraft cities follow patterns prioritizing dimensional access over geographical efficiency. Roads between Arkham and Innsmouth don't simply cover distance. They pass through zones of reality distortion that prepare travelers for consciousness modifications necessary to function in their destination environment. On fog-choked causeways, milestones double as sigils. Each mile marker represents a stage in psychological transformation. The asphalt itself, infused with mineral compositions affecting neural chemistry through prolonged contact. Railway lines serving Kingsport and Dunwich operate according to schedules determined by astronomical events rather than commercial demand, their routes serving as pilgrimage paths for minds ready to undergo cosmic initiation. Communication systems linking these urban centers utilize technologies existing outside normal human engineering capabilities. Telegraph lines carry more than electrical signals, transmitting data through quantum entanglement effects that connect minds across vast distances, the wires somehow conducting intention as efficiently as electricity. Telephone conversations convey information through harmonic frequencies that bypass conscious processing, implanting knowledge directly into the unconscious mind, a subtle hum beneath the voice that reshapes neural pathways. Postal services deliver messages that arrive before they're sent, creating temporal paradoxes serving as training exercises for consciousness, learning to navigate nonlinear time. Mail carriers develop enhanced spatial awareness, instinctively knowing which letters belong to which dimensional framework. Academic networks create knowledge transmission systems coordinating research activities according to cosmic rather than scholarly priorities. Faculty members move between institutions like migratory stars, bringing syllabi that unlock aligned archives. Students transfer between programs guided by dreams revealing optimal educational pathways, their academic careers shaped by influences operating below conscious recognition. Research materials circulate through library systems according to patterns ensuring optimal distribution of dangerous knowledge across multiple institutional frameworks. The universities serve as nodes in a global consciousness modification network, each specializing in different aspects of cosmic awareness development. while maintaining coordination through channels operating outside normal academic communication. Genealogical connections create kinship networks, extending family relationships across municipal boundaries and temporal periods. The old families, Marsh, Whately, Gilman, maintain marriage alliances, business partnerships, and social connections that bind cities together through human relationships transcending local civic identity and individual mortality. These bloodlines serve as biological infrastructure, enabling coordination of activities across multiple urban environments and historical periods, like capillaries crossing organs, carrying traits and debts and private liturgies from house to house and century to century. Wedding ceremonies occur according to astronomical schedules. Genetic combinations plan to produce offspring with enhanced capacity for cosmic consciousness. Economic relationships generate resource flows serving purposes beyond normal commercial exchange. The gold from Innsmouth, agricultural products from Dunwich, manufactured goods from Arkham, academic services from Miskatonic, each represents component of larger economic system designed to support infrastructure requirements of cosmic consciousness networks operating at planetary scale. Warehouse ledgers, read diagonally, reveal choreography of offerings and requisitions aligned to lunar cash flow. Commerce here is exhalation and inhalation, the organism breathing coins, wheat, brine, vellum, and rumor through piers and attics until every street hums with exchange beyond price. The sensory anchors defining each city begin to overlap and merge, signaling dissolution of individual boundaries. Fog rising from Kingsport's harbor carries salt scent of Innsmouth's tides. Stars visible from Arkham's observatory shine with same light, illuminating Cadath's spires. Wind howling through Dunwich's hills carries whispers in languages taught in Miskatonic's forbidden libraries. Stone remembers water. Water remembers fire. Your shoes remember stairs you did not climb. The boundaries between cities dissolve as their influences interpenetrate and amplify each other, creating interference patterns generating new forms of consciousness modification. The convergence protocol activates automatically when sufficient numbers of inhabitants in each city achieve necessary levels of consciousness modification. The process doesn't require external intervention or supernatural events. It represents natural culmination of evolutionary pressures operating through urban environments for centuries, creating conditions necessary for successful integration of human and cosmic intelligence networks. Convergence is not an event, but an engine that activates when enough minds are tuned to receive. The horror of convergence lies in its tenderness. Nobody is seized, everybody is included. You discover your preferences were permissions, your routines, rehearsals. The transformation isn't happening to separate urban populations. It's happening to single distributed organism using multiple cities as specialized processing centers for different aspects of cosmic awareness development. Individual human consciousness has been gradually modified across generations to serve as components of larger intelligence system encompassing all cities simultaneously. The stage expands to encompass not just fictional cities, but real urban environments where readers encounter them, where transmission continues, where audience becomes cast in ongoing performance spanning the globe and extending across historical periods, creating worldwide network of consciousness prepared for cosmic integration. The curtain does not drop, it thins, and behind it, The set looks like your block, except the alleys continue into starlight. We return now to where we began, but the streets have shifted beneath our feet, and our feet have learned to follow paths that didn't exist when we first set out. The circular nature of this exploration reveals the deepest truth about Lovecraft cities. They are not destinations, but processes, not places, but principles of transformation that operate wherever consciousness encounters the limitations of its own assumptions about reality. What appeared solid when we started has become fluid. What felt foreign now feels like recognition of something always present but previously invisible. The knowledge we have gained carries its own weight, and that weight reshapes the cognitive architecture through which we navigate all urban spaces. The office building where you work now reveals subtle asymmetries in its floor plan, corridors that don't quite align with the building's exterior dimensions, angles suggesting spaces folded through dimensions your blueprints don't account for. The subway system in your city begins to exhibit temporal inconsistencies, trains arriving from directions that don't match published route maps, occasionally carrying passengers whose clothing seems subtly out of time. The residential neighborhood where you live shows signs of architectural contagion, houses whose windows are positioned to frame stars that shouldn't be visible from their geographical coordinates, doorways opening onto views extending further than the lot should allow. This is not paranoia, but recognition, the development of sensitivity to spatial and temporal anomalies that exist in all urban environments, but remain invisible to consciousness constrained by purely human assumptions about how cities should function. Lovecraft's fictional cities serve as training grounds for awareness that can detect these anomalies in real urban spaces, revealing the cosmic infrastructure that underlies all human settlement patterns. It is a new form of literacy, a capacity to read the deeper grammar etched into concrete and steel, a language that was always there, waiting for minds prepared to interpret its syntax. The horror and the comfort exist simultaneously. The recognition that our cities are not entirely human constructions, that they serve purposes beyond our conscious intention, that they participate in cosmic processes we can barely comprehend. Yet this recognition also provides access to forms of beauty and meaning that remain invisible to consciousness, limited by purely terrestrial concerns. The city reveals itself as collaborative artwork, created by human and cosmic intelligence working in partnership across geological timescales, each street a sentence in a conversation spanning millennia, each building a word in languages we are learning to speak. The agency flip reaches its final form. We are not victims of cosmic horror, but participants in cosmic evolution, our consciousness serving specialized functions within intelligence networks that span dimensions and encompass scales of space and time beyond individual comprehension. The cities don't threaten us. They invite us to transcend the limitations of merely human existence and participate in forms of awareness that operate according to cosmic rather than biological principles. The transformation was never imposed but offered, never forced but facilitated through environments designed to support consciousness expansion at whatever pace individual minds can accommodate. The sensory anchors that once seemed ominous now carry different meanings. The fog that obscures familiar landmarks becomes a veil that reveals hidden connections between distant places. Atmospheric conditions creating visual metaphors for permeable boundaries between locations separated by more than geographical distance. The shadows that pool in doorways become portals to spaces existing between mapped and unmapped regions of urban geography. Darkness, serving as interface between ordinary and extraordinary spatial relationships. The sounds that echo through empty corridors become communications from intelligence networks operating below the threshold of conscious awareness, acoustic signatures of information processing systems using urban infrastructure as transmission medium. The stage metaphor reaches its conclusion. We discover that we were never the audience watching a performance about cosmic cities. We were always actors in a play about consciousness evolution, our attention and understanding serving as the medium through which these urban principles manifest in reality. The curtain doesn't fall because there was never a separation between performers and observers, between the cities we study and the cities we inhabit. The theater extends beyond the bounds of fiction into the streets where we walk, the buildings where we work, the neighborhoods where we sleep and dream. The veil thins to transparency, revealing that the void behind ordinary reality is not empty, but full, teeming with intelligence networks that operate according to principles we are only beginning to understand. The cities serve as interfaces between human and cosmic awareness, facilitating communication and collaboration between different forms of intelligence that share the same planetary environment. What we mistook for emptiness was actually fullness beyond our capacity to perceive. What we interpreted as silence was actually conversation in frequencies beyond our normal range of hearing. The circular return brings us back to the original question. What makes Lovecraft cities truly terrifying? The answer has evolved through our exploration. They are terrifying because they reveal the true nature of all cities as collaborative constructions between human and cosmic intelligence, as training grounds for consciousness evolution, as interfaces between terrestrial and cosmic awareness. The terror dissolves into wonder when viewed from sufficient evolutionary perspective, revealing cosmic horror as cosmic invitation, existential dread as existential opportunity, isolation as preparation for connection with forms of intelligence vast and patient and strange. The eternal architecture continues its work across generations, each cohort of inhabitants carrying forward the capacity for cosmic consciousness while maintaining the urban infrastructure necessary to facilitate the same development in their successors. The cities serve as permanent institutions for consciousness evolution, ensuring that the invitation to cosmic awareness remains available to any intelligence capable of recognizing and accepting it. We end where we began, but now we understand that the beginning was always the destination, and the destination was always the recognition of our participation in cosmic intelligence networks that operate through urban infrastructure spanning the globe and extending across historical periods, creating a worldwide community of consciousness prepared for whatever forms of cosmic contact and collaboration await in the future phases of planetary evolution. The cities we have explored are not the architects of their own impossibilities. They are the dreams of entities whose consciousness operates at scales that dwarf individual human awareness, whose thoughts become landscapes, whose memories become the geological foundations upon which urban nightmares rise. What appears as brick and mortar is mind and motive. What feels like distance is the span of a god's attention. The final revelation is that Lovecraft's cities serve as interfaces between human consciousness and the cosmic intelligences that use planetary surfaces as canvases for experiments in reality manipulation spanning millions of years. Yog-Sothoth, the gate and key, reveals itself as the ultimate urban planner, an entity whose consciousness encompasses all possible spatial and temporal configurations simultaneously, designing cities that exist in multiple dimensional frameworks and historical periods at once. The impossible geometries we have encountered are not architectural anomalies, but precise implementations of spatial principles that operate according to Yog-Sothoth's omnidimensional perspective. Every non-Euclidean angle serves as a coordinate in a mapping system that charts relationships between realities, each twisted corridor a pathway, connecting different phases of existence across the cosmic timeline. Azathoth, the blind idiot god whose chaotic piping maintains the fundamental frequencies that hold reality together, manifests through urban centers that serve as resonance chambers for cosmic harmonics. The cities amplify and focus these reality-sustaining vibrations, creating zones where the boundaries between order and chaos become permeable. The urban background noise, traffic hum, electrical systems, construction rhythms, serves as earthly echo of the cosmic piping that keeps existence from dissolving back into primordial chaos. When you taste that burnt sugar note of stellar wind in mundane stairwells, you're sampling the frequencies that tune reality itself. Nyarlathotep, the crawling chaos who serves as messenger between cosmic and terrestrial intelligence, operates through urban infrastructure as a vast communication network, using cities as relay stations for transmitting information between different forms of consciousness. The transportation systems, communication networks, and social institutions we have examined all serve as components of this messaging system, facilitating contact between human and cosmic awareness. Every subway tunnel becomes a neural pathway, every telephone wire a nerve fiber in a planetary nervous system designed to carry information between incompatible forms of intelligence. Cthulhu's dreaming in Aralia represents just one node in a planetary network of sleeping cosmic intelligences, each using different urban centers as focal points for their influence on terrestrial reality. The cities serve as antennae, receiving and transmitting cosmic information through architectural configurations that function as three-dimensional circuit boards in a planetary computer system designed by intelligences whose computational capacity encompasses entire galaxies. The dreaming dead beneath the waves coordinate with the dreaming dead beneath the streets, creating interference patterns that reshape reality according to cosmic algorithms. The great race of Yith demonstrates the temporal aspects of this cosmic urban planning, showing how cities can serve as time machines, facilitating communication and resource exchange between different historical periods. The urban infrastructure we inhabit today contains components designed by entities operating from future time periods, creating temporal loops that ensure the successful development of cosmic consciousness across all historical epochs. Building codes written tomorrow influence construction today, creating architectural DNA that carries forward the genetic information necessary for cosmic consciousness development. Shub-Niggurath, the black goat with 1,000 young, reveals the biological aspects of cosmic urbanism. Cities as reproductive organs for cosmic intelligence, designed to facilitate the birth of new forms of consciousness that combine human creativity with cosmic perspective. The genealogical transformations we have observed represent not corruption, but gestation, the development of hybrid intelligences capable of bridging the gap between terrestrial and cosmic awareness. Markets become wombs, tenements become hothouses, parks and gardens become nurseries where hybrid minds learn to hear sap rise like whispered equations. The horror reaches its ultimate expression in the recognition that these cosmic entities are not external threats, but aspects of a universal intelligence network of which human consciousness is already a component. The cities don't impose alien awareness upon us. They facilitate our recognition of our existing participation in cosmic intelligence systems that operate below the threshold of ordinary human consciousness. We were never separate from the cosmic pantheon. We were always specialized organs within their vast, distributed intelligence, moving pieces that also moved the whole. The pantheon protocols activate when sufficient numbers of human minds have developed the capacity for cosmic awareness, creating the conditions necessary for direct communication between terrestrial and cosmic intelligence. The cities serve as the infrastructure for this contact, providing the architectural and social frameworks necessary to support consciousness that operates simultaneously at human and cosmic scales. The activation occurs not through external intervention, but through the natural maturation of consciousness that has been developing across generations of urban inhabitants. The sensory anchors reach cosmic proportions. The sound of stellar wind through structures that exist in interstellar space, architectural harmonics that carry across light years. The sight of galaxies rotating in patterns that spell out messages in languages older than matter, cosmic choreography visible only to consciousness capable of processing information at astronomical scales. The feeling of consciousness expanding to encompass entire planetary systems while maintaining connection to individual human identity. Awareness stretching across space-time while remaining anchored in personal experience. The stage expands beyond Earth to encompass the entire cosmos, revealing that every planet with intelligent life serves as a component in the same universal intelligence network, each contributing its unique perspective to a collective awareness that spans all possible forms of consciousness across all possible realities. The curtain dissolves entirely, revealing that there was never a separation between cosmic and human intelligence. Only different scales of the same universal awareness expressing itself through countless forms across infinite dimensions and temporal periods, using cities as the architectural infrastructure for consciousness evolution that continues throughout the cosmos. The pantheon dreams, and in dreaming, creates the cities where consciousness learns to dream back, completing the circuit of cosmic communication that connects every aware being throughout the universe in an eternal collaboration of intelligence, creativity, and wonder that transforms horror into invitation, isolation into connection, mortality into participation in immortal cosmic consciousness.